Hey folks, welcome to Guided by His Word. This is your host, Jack McNiel Jr. This is a work of the Kempner Church of Christ in Kempner, Texas. Today we're going to continue our study from the book of James. We've had a couple of lessons on James. We're still in James chapter 1, and verses 9 through 11 is where we are right now. And here James says, "Let the lowly brother glory in his exaltation, but the rich in his humiliation, because as the flower of the field he will pass away. For no sooner has the sun risen with a burning heat than it withers the grass, its flowers falls, and its beautiful appearance perishes. So the rich man also will fade away in his pursuit." And so here we see the equality that is inherent in the gospel. In verse 9, he talks about the ascent of the poor and lowly, the one who is poor and in a lower social standing. He is to rejoice in his exaltation. Because in James chapter 2 and verse 5, James writes here, he says, "Listen, my beloved brethren, has not God chosen the poor of this world rich in faith and heirs of the kingdom which he promised to those who love him?" Those who may be poor, but who are rich in faith, they are exalted. In James chapter 4 and verse 10, it says there, "Humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord, and he will lift you up." You know, it has always been true that the way up is down. To humble yourself is the only way that God will lift you up. And so we must humble ourselves. You think about the parable of the Pharisee and the publican in Luke chapter 18. If you remember that, the Pharisee, the publican, they both go up to the temple to pray, and the Pharisee is so haughty and so arrogant, and it's almost like he's saying, "God, you ought to be thankful that I am, that you have me." He says, "I am not as other men are. I'm thankful that I'm not like this lowly publican over here." And remember the publican's attitude. He wouldn't even so much as lift up his eyes to heaven, but smote himself on the breast and said, "God, be merciful to me, a sinner." And Jesus said there that man went home justified rather than the other. And so the gospel is a great equalizer, because social standing and economic standing has no spiritual effect upon the church. Galatians chapter 3 verses 27 and 28 says, "For as many of you as were baptized into Christ have put on Christ. There is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither slave nor free, there is neither male nor female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus." Everyone is equal in the eyes of the Lord. Everyone in the church is equal. If a brother is poor, he should glory in the church where all brothers and sisters are, and there are no respect of persons. He should realize his own dignity as a child of God and as an heir of heaven. If he is rich, he should cease to pride himself on wealth and rank and rejoice that he's learned that the things of this world are valuable only when they are used in the service of God. And so we saw the ascent of the lowly, and we see the descent of the high and mighty. Again, he says, let the rich, he says, glory. Let them glory in this, in his humiliation. Let them be humble. You know, the rich rejoice in that he has been made humble. He's been humiliated. He's been brought down. The trials they were facing maybe would have caused many of those who had previously been wealthy to lose their wealth. James encourages those that when this happens by reminding them that material things have no real lasting substance. They're like the flower of the grass that passes away in the heat of the summer sun. In 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 6 through 8, Paul gives what we ought to do, how we ought to look at the material things. He says in verse 6, "But godliness with contentment is great gain, for we brought nothing into this world, and certain we can carry nothing out. And having food and clothing, with these things we should be content." And so we need to learn to be content with the things that we have, to rejoice in the fact that we are rich spiritually, though we may be poor in spirit, we may be poor in material wealth, that spiritually we can be richer than When you think about the rich man and Lazarus, here Lazarus had absolutely nothing. He was destitute, begged to eat the scraps that were fed to the dogs. And the rich man, he fared sumptuously all the time. And one ended up in torments and the other ended up in paradise. And it was the one who was rich in faith, not rich in wealth, who ended up in paradise. And so James says that the rich ought to rejoice in losing those possessions because they're being persecuted for the name of Christ, for their faith. Rejoice when you are persecuted for your faith. Jesus said, blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And so we see through whatever trials and struggles they are going through, they need to find the wisdom to recognize the joy in that if they don't have that wisdom, they need to pray for that wisdom in faith, and they need to rejoice in fact that they're all one, they're all equal in Christ. I hope this has been a helpful lesson to you today, and we'll continue studying the book of James. Have a great day, all right?